As I mentioned, this stock market today, the Dow dropping 800 points. That's the worst day of this whole year of 2019. Experts say there are troubling signs in the bond market, and we could be pointing potentially towards a recession.
When this happens, this is a sign of danger. Before every recession, the yield curve has turned down. Look at that one, look at that one, look at that one, look at that one, look at this one, look at this one, look at this one, look at this one, and guess what's happening here? We've turned down again. So it is a harbinger. It is a foreshadowing of a recession.
We also need to remind our audience we have been in an economic expansion that's positive territory for 9 years. We are due for some level of a correction.
Now, depending on the extent of that correction, there could be trouble in Donald Trump's political planning. Because remember, what have we heard over and over again, including from people who are not only sympathetic to Trump, but people who look at him and say, well, the economy could be a big help to him, that his best hope for re-election would be maintaining and then trying to sell a strong economy.
If the economy does not slip, the president will win re-election.
3.6% unemployment. Yep. Consistently high growth rates are typically the recipes by which presidents get reelected.
But I think he's going to get resoundingly reelected. He'll probably have a 40-state landslide because what are you going to do? You're going to put a socialist in place and wreck the entire economy?
What if the economy gets wrecked, though? That was just a month ago, an eternity in the Trumpian political calendar, because that man there, Scaramucci, has now said Donald Trump's failures have driven him to oppose his old boss. And while millions of Americans are going home tonight aware to some degree that there's at least less money on paper in their retirement accounts and nervous about all the regular life stuff, your rent, your health care, just getting by, well, the president's been spending this week lamenting that he thinks being president is costing his company money, to his inflated tune of over $3 billion.
This thing is costing me a fortune being president. It's probably costing me from $3 to $5 billion for the privilege of being, and I couldn't care less. I don't care. You know, if you're wealthy, it doesn't matter. I just want to do a great job.
We'll be joined momentarily about all of this with economist and former Labor Secretary Robert Reich, who knows his way around these issues, and the White House. We begin here in New York with Michael Eric Dyson, professor at Georgetown University, and my colleague, who you just saw there breaking this down, MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle. Good to see you both. What is real here, and what are the perils for the Trump White House?
So just think about this for a moment. President Trump has been arguing, I'm your money guy. And there are lots of people in the middle who you hear say, listen, I don't like his rhetoric, but the economy, I've got to stick with the economy. What happens when the economy falls out? Now, here's what's noticeable. When President Trump said we need the corporate tax cut, we need deregulation, the argument was it was going to trickle down to the workers. You were going to see this big spur of growth, and that would be positive for everyone. We haven't actually seen that, though. And what's worse, even though companies got a very big tax cut and they're sitting on cash, because they have absolutely no idea what the president is doing on trade and fiscal policy, those companies are not reinvesting and they're not hiring. They're sitting on that cash in the same way that companies sat on cash in the Obama administration, because there were fears from corporate America that they would get more regulation in the Obama administration. That was a fair fear. Now they're sitting on cash again because, you tell me, the president has shown in the last 24 hours he doesn't know how trade works. He sits there and says, look at how great the U.S. dollar is. People are flooding to buy dollars. They're flooding to buy U.S. treasuries because that's a flight to quality. You're looking for the safest asset. And it's not just our economy, because, yes, our economy is better than others. You have to look at what's happening around the world. The unrest in China, GDP numbers in Germany are terrible. So this global slowdown compared to the uncertainty, everybody likes to know what the path is.
Well, and so this goes also to what is the sort of buffer for his trade policies? In other words, if things are generally better here for whatever reason, does that give him more insulation to play around? And if things get worse, do you think Americans, whether they're really read up on the economy like you are or not, will they say, wait a minute, why are we picking fights with China in the first place?
Well, what's happening right now is Americans are going to start to see that the president has been selling a lot when it comes to how great the economy is. Remember, business sentiment, consumer sentiment has gone up. That's how do we feel about it? Because he's a tremendous salesman. But now we're saying, what do we actually have? And while we're so scared like this, the example I would give, if you were going to put a swimming pool in your backyard this spring, But now you're afraid there's going to be terrible storms all winter, and you might need to replace your roof or your windows. You're not going to buy that swimming pool. Right now, we have absolutely no idea. Yesterday, when the president said, I'm going to hold off on tariffs, he proved to the world that China's not paying for the tariffs. America is.
And maybe you downgrade to a slip and slide.
You might. And he also postponed, or out of the ground pool. He postponed the tariffs when China didn't even ask him to. So the president blinks while China has a weaker hand.
That's a great point. Michael, I want to bring you in as we look at
a slip and slide.
The slip and slide. Well, because you remember those. They're fun, and they are pretty affordable.
Right.
When you're young, the older you get, when you run and slide,
anything can happen.
Yeah.
Professor, this all comes amidst this other economic discussion, which is Donald Trump claiming through these policies, we've got to deal with these immigrants as if they're getting so much. I want to give a fact check and then go to your analysis. The fact check is undocumented immigrants aren't eligible for Social Security. The majority of the taxpayer-funded programs, whether you call them welfare programs or you call them the public benefits people pay into, don't go to them. And then you look at what they pay into. Immigrants, when you take it all together, paid over $300 billion all in on taxes in one of the last years we have, 2014. Why is it so important to Donald Trump not only to go after immigrants, something you've talked about, but also to mislead or lie and leave people with the impression that this is somehow an economic loss for America?
I mean, this is the ultimate example of self-defeating behavior. Look, he can't make the Chinese do what he claimed they were going to do in terms of the tariffs. He can't make the Mexicans build the wall. He can't make the Republicans behave correctly. The only thing he's in control of is a narrative, a mythology. And the more he lies and the more he accretes those lies, people begin to believe in the durability of his lying. That is, it's not the truth. It's not the stability that he points to. It's the fact that he says it and he can wave a magic wand. Now, when people know that the emperor has no clothes, that these mendacities are piling up, that the numbers you just gave us.
Or the emperor has no swimsuit in this example.
No swimsuit and no ability to swim, really, because we are treading treacherous waters right now, and the country is under assault. And this is where folklore meets kind of empirical, economic analysis. Because now we got a president who's throwing gasoline on the already lit reality of our economic downturn, and it really bodes ill for those who are the most vulnerable.
Well,
because they stigmatize and scandalize.
Did
that's
you know
the question,
those numbers
Stephanie.
yesterday?
Well, we know a lot of numbers around
But that's
here.
it. He's preying on our ignorance and our insecurity.
Well, and that goes to what I want to ask you. Take a look at here, Donald Trump talking about the immigration rule. Because if you do go into a downturn, right, you also have a lot of blaming. He can play on that. We were just listening to some analysts say, this hurts him. And it could. Obviously, you don't want things to be economically down. But also, who is going to take the blame for that? Here is the president. Take a look.
I am tired of seeing our taxpayers paying for people to come into the country and immediately go into welfare and various other things. So I think we're doing it right.
Here's why that's so unfair. Because there are millions of hardworking Americans that went home from work last night and turned on conservative news and said, hold on a second. The president is sick of immigrants coming and getting on welfare. And those people, just like we might not have known, don't realize that the majority of immigrants don't have access to the welfare system. And it's not just undocumented immigrants. It's seasonal workers, temporary workers, H-1B visa holders, dreamers. They do not have access to our welfare system. But when the president of the United States says that, I'll tell you, my mom and dad are going to sit in their kitchen and go, well, I don't know, Steph. Maybe he has a point. Because they don't know the truth.
They don't know the truth.
By the way, shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Rule.
Louise and Frank, always.
Represent. So the reality is this, that not only is he lying, and not only does he distort the truth, the reality is most of the people who are on welfare look like the people who are mad at the immigrants who are getting it. That's number one, right? And number two, this is where the jig is up. Donald Trump now has inherited an extremely strong economy from Barack Obama and the practices and processes that he put in place, regardless if you argue with him on either side. Now he's got to do it himself. Now he can't just ride that tide anymore. What am I going to do? What's my fiscal policy? What's my economic integrity? How do I call the nation together? How do I get businesses believing in me once again? I don't just change with the weather. One day I'm going to have these tariffs, then I'm not. I'm going to beat up China, but no, I'm not. Oh, I looked at Fox and they told me not to do so. This is volatility at its ultimate.
And he doesn't have a Robert Reich caliber SWAT team around him.
There you go.
In the case of a crisis, Peter Navarro was discovered by Jared Kushner from
on
an Amazon search. Never forget that.
I mean, look, it almost sounds like you're saying that Donald Trump has been standing on Barack Obama's economic shoulders. And if there is a downturn, he'll have to be self-made at a very time that he is lecturing all the immigrants about being self-made. And the question is, have you ever been at a policy level self-made? I mean, both of you hang with me.
$400 million worth of self-made.
Right. You hang with me. I love it. You speak without speaking sometimes. We all see that. Hang with me. I'm going to bring in, as mentioned, economist and Clinton Labor Secretary Robert Reich. His latest book is The Common Good. Take it away, sir. What do our viewers need to know about what's happening tonight?
Well, Ari, I think the economy really is the central issue right now. Everybody knows about Donald Trump's racism. Everybody has witnessed his xenophobia and his nativism over the past years. The real new issue is the economy is very, very fragile. It's not just the stock market. I mean, we know that nothing trickled down. That trickled-down tax cut actually was a huge mistake. It was a knowledgeable mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing, but it was a mistake in the sense that the American public, as we saw in the 2018 election, actually began to understand that there was no trickle down. It only trickled up. And this kind of skepticism about Trumponomics is going to be very, very soon widespread. He's the only president since the Second World War never to have favorabilities above 50%. That is, never has there been more than half of the public who have liked the job he is doing. And now he is, I think, skating on very, very thin ice. Nobody wants a recession, but I think the chances of a recession are now over 50%.
So let me
between
ask
now
you on
and
that.
Election day.
You say over 50%. Wow. That means there's a high probability people who know you and know your expertise aren't going to like hearing that because they're going to believe that you might be right. Nobody wants that, as you say. When you look at that, do you think that's something that Donald Trump contributed to, that likelihood, or just happens to be in office for it?
Well, I think there are two big issues here. He did not contribute to the fact that it's a very, very long recovery, long in the tooth. You get to 9 or 10 years, and you're almost definitely going to have a recession. But what he contributed to, Ari, is number one, this huge tax cut that was kind of steroidal lift. It was kind of a sugar high for the entire stock market that could not go on. I mean, it was temporary. Sugar highs are temporary. The second thing is China, and this trade war with China. Not only is there no strategy, but it also is extremely dangerous. This is the largest and second largest economies in the entire world.
And I wonder about that.
And to have them going at each other is dangerous for the whole world economy.
I wonder about that, given the president you worked for. And I'm here reading from a piece here late last year. The lower the market drops, the more Donald Trump worries he's losing his most potent argument for re-election, said officials speaking to the Washington Post. That was just at the end of last year. You had a president that was laser focused, he told us, on the economy and did a lot of things, including reaching compromise with Congress, balanced budget, other things. Do you see this as a president who can roll up his sleeves and be that focused?
No. I mean, this is the most unfocused president. And he doesn't. I mean, this is a president who not only doesn't know detail, but he lies about the details he does know. So, no, there's not going to be any focus. There's no economic strategy. There's nobody around him who's capable of even advising him and having him listen to an economic strategy.
And the trickle-down didn't work when it was supposed to work with George Gilder before, and it certainly isn't working now.
And
Final
remember,
word.
The president at times resonates with people because the spirit, listen, the fact that he wants to take on China, people like that idea. It's his execution of these things that don't work. Now, his tax cut temporarily helped the market because it goosed the stock market, but that was very short term. Even corporate America said, we don't need a tax cut this big. Right. But once the market is done being goosed, the market isn't the economy. And as far as the economy goes, remember, he said GDP would be 3%, 4, 5, 6. We're at 2+, and that's where we've been for 10 years.
Stephanie Ruhle, Professor Dyson, Robert Reich, thanks to each of you. Really appreciate it. You can always catch Stephanie, of course, right here at 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. on MSNBC. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.